You can't access abundance because you're going about it the wrong way. In the old paradigm, you're told that you have to work harder, save more, achieve more, adopt an abundance mindset, visualize and feel what it's like to have abundance. But have you noticed that you can be doing all of those things and more, but you're still not experiencing abundance? It's so easy to believe that the solution is to do more if we want to have more. But is that really true? What if there's something you've been missing? In this video, I'm going to share 3 takeaways to help you access the infinite, ever-present, and unlimited frequency of abundance. My name is Cheong. I catalyze your shift from the ordinary to the exhilaration of the quantum by giving you the tools to change your frequency resonance so that the life you live matches the life you dream of. Takeaway number 1. Abundance is actually a resonance. I have a client who, when she found me, was very negative. She was up in her head a lot. She had a lot of control patterns. She had difficulty maintaining her relationships because everything was always someone else's fault. And she always gave more than they gave to her. And one of her big stories was that she had been swindled out of $100,000 of her savings by some online personal development guru. So we worked together to release a bunch of her distortion patterns like victimhood, scarcity, non-deserving, self-doubt, things like that. And as she releases her distortion patterns, her frequency resonance starts to rise. And as her frequency resonance starts to rise, she has different thoughts, different emotions, and what she even wants to work on in our sessions changes. She's much less triggered by other people, more in her center, and she's able to see her own distortions better. It's not just everyone else's fault. She's like, wait a minute, I'm doing this and that's their response. And as a result of her taking a greater accountability and recognizing her distortions and being able to release them, she starts to feel happy for the first time in what she tells me is years. And then, out of left field, she gets a notice from an attorney she doesn't know and hasn't heard of before. And it turns out there was a class action suit against the online personal development guru, and she's having $98,000 of the $100,000 that she thought was lost to her forever returned. And with some of that, she's launched a new business that's starting to make a lot of money. And even more importantly, she loves what she's doing. Most people think that abundance is material abundance, having stuff, having money, and they think that when they have the stuff, that they're in the resonance of abundance. But that's not necessarily true. The abundance frequency resonance is infinite. It has always existed and always will. But there's something called distortion patterns that limit or prevent or block your access to this limitless abundance. So what are distortion patterns and where do they come from? Well, distortion patterns are higher order subconscious blocks. They're the things that keep you stuck no matter what you try to do in certain areas of your life. And they come from a place that you probably aren't aware of. So when you come into incarnation or into embodiment or into this lifetime, you must drop in your frequency resonance because here you are as infinite indestructible consciousness, and then you want to have an embodied experience, and your body is vibrating lower than you as consciousness. So you drop in vibration in order to have embodiment. So here you are, this sphere of pure source energy vibrating at a very unique rate. That rate of vibration is what makes you, you, and me. So when this sphere of pure source energy drops in vibration in order to have the embodied experience, what look like layers and layers and layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of duct tape form around the sphere. Now the thing about layers and layers of duct tape is that it's really heavy. So as a result of all of that duct tape, the vibrational rate of that sphere of pure source energy, which is you, slows down. And not only does the vibrational rate of you slow down, but you believe that there's only duct tape around you. You don't perceive or are aware of that infinite field of pure source energy that's everywhere all around you. You believe that you're limited because all you perceive are all those layers of duct tape. You only perceive your distortion patterns. So where do your distortion patterns come from? Well, your distortion patterns come from things like your lineage or your ancestry. So meaning what your ancestors experience, whether or not you know their names, very much impacts how your genes express and the choices you make. Now, this is the field of epigenetics that Dr. Bruce Lipton, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and Greg Braden talk about a lot in terms of how it is that our ancestors very much impact our experience of our current reality. Now, you also have cultural distortion patterns. You also have religious distortion patterns. Whether or not you were raised within a religious household, your ancestors definitely experienced religion, so it's in the field of what they experienced, which you have now inherited. So religious distortion patterns definitely affect you. And then there's, of course, your past lives. So let's imagine that you've had tens of lifetimes where you starved to death because of famine or because of war. Well, that will definitely affect your sense of scarcity or abundance in this lifetime. So it's kind of like this. Imagine that you've hiked up to this beautiful vista point on a craggy mountaintop. And as you stand there, you look out at this spectacular view of the mountains and the sky beyond it. But instead of just seeing the mountains and the trees and the view, what you see in front of you is also an orange filter, and then a yellow filter, and then a gray filter, and then a filter that makes the focus kind of funky, and then you see a purple filter. So instead of seeing just the clarity of that mountain view, you're seeing all of this filtering that's happening. So you think that the mountain view is actually the culmination of looking through all those various filters. Now, the funny thing is we all have different distortion patterns. So even if you're standing next to your best friend, they would not perceive the mountain range view the same way that you do. Their filters would have different colors, different opacities, different kinds of warbliness. So your interpretation, your perspective of the same thing is colored by those distortion patterns. That's why we all have different perspectives, experiences, and access to that infinite resonance of abundance. So when you release your distortion patterns and rise in your frequency resonance, just like the client I mentioned, you start to experience abundance in more ways than one. It's not just money, it's in happiness, in time, and in so many other ways. So what about those people out there who are like defrauding old ladies or stealing from others or just being abusive in terms of how they're gaining their money? They're obviously not very highly resonating, but yet they have a lot of material abundance. Well, a couple of things. First off, they don't necessarily have the same distortion patterns of lack and scarcity, meaning they might have a lot of other stuff in terms of being abusive and greedy and all those other things, but it's easier for them to access abundance. And also, just because they have a lot of things or a lot of money doesn't mean they also don't have a lot of other distortion patterns. And it doesn't mean that they're happy or fulfilled or feel deeply connected or any of those other things that are really important to having a truly full or spherical experience of abundance. Takeaway number 2. True abundance is way more than money. It's what I call spherical abundance, or abundance on all levels, financially, spiritually, in your relationships, in your sense of connection, purpose, fulfillment, you name it, abundance in all areas. I have a client who's a chiropractor, and during COVID, her practice really shrank because people weren't getting care, they were afraid. Also, the city where she lived, a lot of people were moving away, so her practice really dropped in number. When COVID ended, she couldn't quite get her groove back on. She was struggling financially. She couldn't get more people into the practice. She was feeling a little bored and discontented and disconnected. She was really finding herself in a funk. Not only was her business slow, but she was starting to feel discontented with other things in her life. In her intimate partnership, the place that they lived was too dark and she needed more sunlight and they didn't have enough money to move. So all of this stuff kept piling up on her. She happened to find me and frequency work through a friend. She was fascinated by it. She's like, okay, I got to release my distortion patterns. So she starts to diligently release her distortion patterns. And as that happens, her frequency resonance starts to rise. As her frequency resonance rises, she notices that she has different kinds of thoughts, different kinds of perspective, a different belief about what's possible. And as that happens, her business starts to get busier because people, for some reason, are really more attracted to her and curious about the work that she does. Now she's thinking to herself, okay, my frequency resonance is getting really high. What else can I do? So she does my quantum manifestation workshop. And when she does the quantum manifestation workshop, she manifests a business that is very robust and has a lot of income coming in. Within 5 weeks of doing that workshop, her business has increased by 60%. Not only are they now making more money, but things have shifted in her intimate partnership. They find new ways to have fun and find that spark again. She feels more deeply connected to pure source and feels like the sense of fulfillment from her work that she had been missing for a while. And the feedback and the stories that she's getting from her clients is really inspiring her to want to teach and share what it is that she knows. So it's like she's fallen in love with her purpose again and how she can help to uplift others. Lo and behold, they find, through a friend of a friend, a new rental. And in this place, there's so many windows and so much sunlight. So as her frequency resonance is rising, her sense and experience and perspective of abundance has completely started to shift. So what I just want to highlight about this story, which is so amazing, is not only did she get like the stuff, I mean, sure, that was a really important part of the manifestation process for her, but really it's that as her frequency resonance rose, she started to feel different. She started to feel the limitlessness of who she truly is. She started to be able to access that infiniteness of that abundance frequency resonance. So that meant that how she felt about everything, herself, her partner, time, her purpose, started to shift first, and then her physical reality reorganized around her. So how do you access that infinite frequency resonance of abundance? Well, you can't do it through your mind, or what I call your little s self. Okay, which is really your ego mind. It's the part of you that tells you you can't, you aren't strong enough, you're not awake enough, you don't deserve to have abundance, you have to work really, really hard for it, you must suffer for it. All those distortion patterns are really what fuels the thoughts and beliefs in your ego mind. And then there's the aspect of you that I call the big S self, the part of you that is infinite, indestructible consciousness that is intrinsically part of the oneness and is aware that it has access to everything. So how do you even know that the big S self is a part of you? Well, if you've ever looked out at a spectacular sunset, or if you've been out camping and looked at that expansive starry sky, and as you look out on these expansive views, you start to feel your heart expand with the gratitude of life. That is the beginning of you experiencing life through the lens of your big S self. Now, the more you can connect with your big S self, the more you're going to have that perspective of that limitless possibility, the more you have an awareness that access to that infinite abundance is completely available to you because you yourself are part of that oneness. So the more that you release the distortion patterns, the more that you're able to move into this higher level perspective of the big S self, the more you have distance from the limiting thoughts and emotions of your little s self, the more you can experience that infinite abundance frequency. And the funny thing is, as you rise in your frequency resonance and as you release your distortion patterns, you start to release your yearning, your desire to have the things, the money, and all that stuff that you start off thinking that you really need in order to experience abundance. You start to just really savor the brilliance of life. And it's kind of funny because when you drop that attachment to having all of that stuff that you believe will make you abundant, that's when the abundance really starts to happen in your physical reality. Not just in terms of money, but in terms of how you feel, the fulfillment that you get to experience, the connection that you have with people, the synchronicity that you experience, and the sheer magic of life. I have a really fun example of this. So a family friend did all the things. You know, he went to a really good school, he worked really hard, worked his way up the corporate ladder in finance, and he got the big job in New York City. So here he is, he's got the Mercedes, he's got the fancy penthouse apartment, he's doing really well, but he has no time. So whenever his family would come visit him, he would actually feel really stressed out because he had no time to spend with them. Now, this is a guy who really feels family is important. He really loves his family a lot, and he really was beside himself that he had all the toys, but yet he couldn't do what he really wanted to do, which was to spend quality time with the people that he loved the most. So it catalyzed this internal search, like, what the hell am I doing? Yeah, I have the lifestyle and the stuff, but what is going on? Like, what's truly important to me? What do I need to do to have life be more fulfilling, for life to feel happier, for me to find that joyfulness that I used to have, that I seem to have lost along the way? So as he's doing this internal search, he puts onto his calendar more things that he loves. So he finds himself on the golf course playing golf because he loves being out in the fresh air. He likes chit-chatting with new people. He loves golf. So one day he finds himself out on the golf course and he thinks to himself, oh my God, what a fantastic day. It's gloriously sunny. He happens to have time to play 18 holes. He's talking to this new golf buddy of his that he's just met, and he's finding the conversation fascinating. And he thinks to himself, this is epic. I just don't want this day to end because I'm really enjoying this conversation. But at the end of the 18 holes, he turns to his new friend and says, you know, I'd really love to hang out with you a little bit more, but I can't because I have to get to the airport and I have to check my bags and get through to security and all that stuff. And his friend says, well, where are you going? And he says, well, I'm going to Heathrow. And he says, oh, don't worry about it. I'm going to Germany. And so he goes, well, what does that have to do with anything? And it turns out that his new friend is Paul Allen, the co-founder of Microsoft. And he says, don't worry about going to Heathrow. I'll take you there in my private jet on my way to Germany. I'll just drop you off. Now, can you imagine that kind of abundance? So when you are high enough in your frequency resonance and in the present moment of linear time and experiencing that limitless, infinite frequency resonance of abundance, spherical abundance can show up for you in the most surprising ways. The key is to raise your frequency resonance so that you have more access to your big S self and you're not as attached and not so afraid that you'll stay in scarcity. So if you'd like to raise your frequency resonance, click on the link in the description below for my Frequency Resonance Accelerator Group Frequency Calibration. Takeaway number 3. Your reality is a reflection of your resonance. So you'll know when you're in spherical abundance, when you start to feel your connection to the brilliance and the richness of life, and your physical reality will mirror it. I have a client who had come to a crossroads in her career. She was feeling burnt out and stressed and exhausted, and she had this knowingness within herself. If I keep going, I'm going to get really sick. But she also didn't want to leave her job because it was extremely lucrative and it was providing what seemed like this amazing lifestyle. But she took a huge leap of faith and she was like, okay, I'm just going to go on an extended sabbatical. During that sabbatical, she found frequency work. and she started to work on herself. Her frequency resonance started to rise. And in that time period, she decides, okay, I'm just going to quit my job and I'm going to start a brand new business. So off she goes, full of inspiration and passion. And as she starts this business, she starts to realize, wait a minute, I'm running into some old scarcity patterns here. I don't feel like I'm going to have enough out on my own. I don't have a steady paycheck. So she works to release more of her distortion patterns of lack, of scarcity. Her resonance rises some more, and her business starts to expand. She starts to charge more money, and it doesn't actually diminish her client base. It actually starts to encourage more people to come to her. She comes on a few of our retreats. She joins my high-end mastermind. She starts to release more of her distortion patterns around scarcity of time and self-doubt, and her experience of abundance really starts to grow. And all of a sudden, this opportunity crosses her path that she wouldn't have seen before. But this opportunity is taking her to a brand new city. Now, this caused a little bit of stress within her because she lived in the city in which she was born. And so all of her family, all of her friends, all of her network is in the city. But because she's released enough of her distortion patterns of lack, of scarcity, of doubt in herself, she realizes the calling of this opportunity, of this new place. So she takes another leap of faith and moves all the way across the country to this brand new city. Now, at first, like many things, the city's a little intimidating. She doesn't know where she's going. She doesn't know where things are. But within a couple of weeks, she's starting to settle in. And not only is she settling in, but it's like her life is starting to ignite with all of this brilliance. She's finding friends quickly. Her manifestation is on rocket fuel. She's meeting the right people at the right time. And everything is starting to feel really, really abundant. And her experience is mirroring that. She's in a house that she loves and she can barely believe that she can afford. And her business is really starting to take off. So all of these things are coming together to reflect the frequency resonance that she's embodying. And because she's in that frequency resonance of spherical abundance more and more, her compulsion, her impulse, is to share it with others, to help others in her own unique way, to help them to rise and experience life in a way that's much more brilliant. So how do you get to this resonance of spherical abundance when it seems like everything's going to hell in a handbasket, people are behaving badly, and it always seems like it doesn't matter how far forward you're going, someone's always cutting you down so you're backwards? Well, it all has to do with the fact that you are co-creating your reality. Now, you're co-creating your reality with pure source or the divine or the oneness, whatever you want to call that very highly resonating consciousness from which everything comes and to which everything returns all the time, in every single second, whether you're doing it consciously or you're doing it unconsciously. So the great news is that as you release your distortion patterns and as your frequency resonance rises, you start to recognize, be aware of, feel that, wait a minute, I have the authority as co-creator of my reality. You actually really start to viscerally know it. And as co-creator of your reality, you start to be able to access that limitless frequency resonance of abundance much more intentionally. And you recognize that you have power over all of those other distortion patterns of lack and scarcity. So when you have that knowingness, it's no longer about the chase to acquire more, to have more money. It's more like you start to really appreciate life, and then you just want to share that with others. How can you inspire others? How can you help light them up? How can you be of service to them? Not in a way where you're negating yourself, but truly because you're in a space of I have this brilliance that I'm aware of, and how can I help you see that and experience that yourself? Not in a way where you're forcing them and they have to do it your way, but really because you're so inspired by life and the resonance that you are, that they want to do the same thing too. So how do you increase your frequency resonance? Well, if you'd like to know more about how to do that, then check out my next video. I'll see you inside.